Thank you for coming and joining us in the New Statesman studio, Rhun.
Real pleasure.
I want to start by asking you about Caerphilly. Do you think that people underestimated Plaid Cymru in the run-up to that election?
I think they did, and certainly the far right in politics did, and I think they almost assumed that by chucking £100,000 at a campaign and a few visits from Nigel Farage, it would be in the bag. They'd long eyed up communities such as Caerphilly, assuming that they would walk into the reform fold, but that's not what happened. And what we saw in that by-election, which has become totemic, for the change going on in Welsh politics now, is that people saw that Plaid Cymru as a communities up party was winning respect with people at a level never seen before, and that positive, hugely positive votes, nearly half of all voters, more than Reform and Labour together, opting for that message of hope and genuine values. Was something that undeniably showed that we are entering a new era. Plaid Cymru was up for it, and we showed that when we work with the people, there's nothing that can stop us.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think people are turning to Plaid Cymru in Wales? What groups are you specifically targeting and trying to appeal to?
It's very interesting when you look at what political opinion is telling you through opinion polls, and of course an actual election in Caerphilly now. A question was asked recently by a pollster: what would be the nightmare scenario for you? 60% odd say it would be a nightmare to have a reform government. Who do you think is best to stop that reform government? Well, Plaid Cymru, again, over half of all respondents. Who's best to stand up for Wales? Again, Plaid Cymru by a long way. The party seen as mirroring and willing to stand up for what's right for Wales always. And the key thing, I think, is we've known that people have respected us, have liked us, but for whatever reason have felt that, that Labour home has been something that they had to stay with in order to keep the Tories out. That's gone out of the window, and now they make the comfortable small step to saying, no, we're gonna trust Plaid. They did it in Caerphilly, and I'm taking nothing for granted in the build-up to May the 7th now, but we know that if we can fight a good campaign, spelling out that vision as clearly as possible, we can build that trust needed to take Wales in an exciting new direction.
Mm-hmm. Do you think people feel betrayed by Labour? Because obviously they've been in power in the Senedd since 1999, so for its entire existence, basically.
A host of things have come together. There's something not normal about having any one party ruling for so long, and at some point that has to come to an end. And it so happens that things have come together to make it clear in people's minds, no, actually, you know what, we need change. We don't have to argue the case for change now. What I have to do is ask people, okay, what kind of change do you want? And try to persuade them to trust Plaid Cymru to be that change and not take that terrible chance with reform. But it's that need for change after a certain amount of time. But it's that letting down of people who've stayed loyal to Labour for so many years by Keir Starmer since he came into UK government. On top of that, then you have the unwillingness of Labour in Wales to genuinely stand up to Keir Starmer when he was making it clear, as has his Chancellor, as did the Home Secretary this week on policing, say, no, you can't have any more Wales. We're not particularly interested in what's going on in Wales. We need a government that'll stand up to that. So if you take all of these things together, I think people have just understood that we need a new leadership for Wales after all those years of Labour. Leadership that will genuinely stand up for Wales and show in everything that it does, in everything that we do, that our loyalty is to the people of Wales, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. And how confident are you that Plaid Cymru will win on the 7th of May?
We take nothing for granted. We've still 3 months to go. We can see in opinion polls what they are telling us, and they are telling us pretty clearly that people are turning to us and ready to turn to us in the greatest numbers ever. They are making it clear that they see it as a straight fight, essentially between Plaid and Reform. What we've got to do in making it clear that nothing has been done yet, no votes has been cast, that we will work, every day in every part of Wales to build that trust and show that we have a plan ready to go for government that has the interest of Wales at heart.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say that it's a straight fight between Plaid Cymru and Reform, because if you look at the Gorton and Denton by-election that's happening in Manchester, the Green Party are kind of taking that line and saying it's a fight between us and Reform. What advice would you give to the Green Party in terms of, approaching an election where it is sort of, you're trying to overturn the governing party, but you're also taking on Reform?
I don't think it's up to me to give advice to the Green Party. We've worked closely with the Greens, and the first Green MP was on a joint ticket with the Plaid Cymru MP, Cennog Davies. So it's a relationship that we have long had, and clearly they are having an impact in England currently. I think what's important for us to focus on in Wales is that we need a progressive party that can beat Reform, that makes sure that Reform doesn't become the largest party in the Senedd. This is the risk posed through the growth of the right in global politics. There's nothing uniquely Welsh or UK here. But for us in Wales, our appeal is make sure that you understand what is at stake, and the way to make sure that we secure those values that are important to us is to vote Plaid Cymru, to make sure that we're the biggest party.
Mm-hmm. And should you win the Senedd elections and become the First Minister of Wales, the first one from Plaid Cymru, what are your plans for your first sort of 100 days in government? Have you started thinking about that?
Indeed, we have. And there is an actual first 100-day plan that we will be publishing. I think it's important that people know what to expect and to what time scale. Hitting the ground hard is something that we are preparing to do. And in many ways, my work with the team is twofold currently. It is putting together an effective campaign, hopefully, how we take our message to every community in Wales so that people understand what we have to offer. And on the other hand, it is that preparing for government and absolutely preparing for those first 100 days. So we want to make sure that people can see action being taken immediately on, for example, dealing with the problems in the health service, the work beginning on setting the course towards raising education standards, on setting up a new development agency for Wales to give a new impetus to creating prosperity in the Welsh economy, getting moves very early on towards bringing in the universal childcare offer that we're putting forward in this election. So you're absolutely right, and our eyes are very, very firmly not just on hopefully building that trust between now and May the 7th, but if we're able to do it from May the 8th, we're good to go.
So I want to ask you a couple of questions about Reform and why you think they've had success in Wales, and kind of some wider questions about how they're doing. But what do you think Reform's chances are of winning Wales, of taking the Senedd, and how are you planning to sort of take them on?
Well, I think it's very important that we in no way bury our heads in the sand. And throughout the world, whether we look at President Trump in America or the growth of Reform in the UK, which is clearly a very real thing, we have to understand that it exists within our communities, and we have to put forward a counter argument to that. I think Reform have tried to pick out those communities that they believe are ripest to support them, and they have looked to communities that have struggled in many ways over the years. But I can't make the argument strong enough that you have to counter that with a different narrative, and ours has to be based on the hope that things can be done in a positive way, bringing communities with us united, rather than essentially dividing people in order to create enough friction to cross the line politically ourselves. We managed to stop that and make it clear in Caerphilly what was at stake. The job is to make that clear on a nationwide level, because it is a party that doesn't have a set of policies for Wales, that's not particularly interested in Wales. Their project is about getting Nigel Farage to Downing Street. They haven't got candidates. They haven't got a leader in Wales. And Wales deserves better than that. They deserve well thought out policy. They deserve a vision. They deserve a direction. And we have 3 months now to make sure that people understand what is at stake. And we just can't afford the chaos that it would bring.
What sort of impact do you think the fact that Reform doesn't have a leader in Wales has?
Well, from Reform's point of view, that they believe that their strongest asset is Nigel Farage, and if you keep everybody else out of the picture, we'll focus on that. But of course, the focus in recent weeks in particular has turned to who the party actually are. And it is very, very clear now a more extreme new version of the Conservatives. And people in Wales understand what the Conservatives did to Wales. People understand what Thatcher stands for in Wales. And I think that clarity that what we have here now is a new Tory party that will not and will never focus on strengthening the kinds of public services that people need. Those messages are really, really important. And it's again about laying out what's at stake.
Mm-hmm. And are you talking to other parties about working together in the Senedd? Because obviously, it might not be that you get an outright majority. You might need to sort of work with other parties in sort of, I don't really know what the exact terminology would be. Would it be a coalition or something like that? Are you kind of preparing the ground for that?
There's never been a majority in the history of devolution in Wales. There was a system where there was this kind of inbuilt bias for Labour. So over the years, they've managed to get at or nearly half of all members. So they've been the largest party every time. But the new political voting system that we have coming in this time makes it even less likely that you have an overall majority. What I've said very, very clearly is that if we are chosen by the people of Wales to be that largest party, our preference would be to form a minority government, but that I would explicitly make it clear that I want to work in partnership with people who have shared values with us, who can bring ideas to the table, because this is about building a better future for our nation. I'm not the kind of person who thinks I have all the good ideas myself, and in that kind of plural system, I want to make mature plural cooperation something that the people of Wales understand and respect. Mm-hmm. But we're putting ourselves up as the leaders to bring that together, if you like.
Yeah, but you wouldn't work with Reform.
We've made that clear. They're diametrically opposed to us on so many things. But my focus will be on what we are trying to achieve, and hoping that the disruption, and we could see the disruption caused when 10% and more of the Senedd were UKIP members after the 2016 election. It was very, very disruptive. Well, we can't afford to let that disruption from the right stop us on the progressive side of politics from trying to put together a programme for government that we can win broad support for. I
wondered what your relationship is like with Keir Starmer, whether you've spoken to him, whether you've had any sort of dialogue. Obviously you are running to win the Senedd elections, but you're still the leader of a party in Wales, still a Welsh politician. Have you had any dialogue with him?
No, I haven't had dialogue. When he became Prime Minister around that time in the summer of 2024, I did ask if we could meet so that we could talk through some of the things that I hoped we would see as action from UK government that could help us in Wales. I was told at the time that I should speak with the Secretary of State for Wales, and that is that. But I'm making it clear now, obviously, if I do become First Minister of Wales, he won't be able to do that, and I trust that he wouldn't want to do that, because I want to have a constructive relationship with him. And I think what's important for people to consider is what we can achieve by having a more transparent relationship between a First Minister in Wales from Plaid Cymru and a Labour UK Prime Minister than currently is the case with two leaders of the same party. Labour will tell us, and it's undemocratic at best, that we in Labour in Wales have a much better chance of getting stuff out of Keir Starmer than you would. Well, it shouldn't matter to a UK Prime Minister who the Welsh First Minister is. It's about what's right for Wales. And it was seen in its starkest terms this week, in fact, around the debate on devolution of policing to Wales. Huge reform of UK policing, the perfect time for the UK government to deliver what commission after commission have called for, and is Labour policy in Wales, which is to devolve policing. We were told by the Home Secretary it won't happen. A Labour MP was quoted in the press saying, no, it's not going to happen, especially given that it's looking less likely that Labour will be running Welsh government.
That's funny, I literally have that quote. I was going to ask you about it.
It is an appalling attitude to take towards Wales. The idea that, as one person put it, unless you're able to hoard power, you will not give Wales the respect or the powers or the tools or whatever you want to call it that we need to move forward as a nation. It is terrible, and it speaks to an entitlement that has, I think, become clearer to the people of Wales in recent times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about Eleanor Morgan, the current First Minister, who is obviously Labour. She had quite a tough time on Today this morning, I think, after you had been on talking about those policing reforms. Do you have any sympathy for her? Because obviously she came in after Vaughan Gethin, there were the kind of the scandals that led to his resignation, and it doesn't necessarily seem like she has the best relationship with Keir Starmer. So I wondered what you thought of how she's handled it, or whether you agree with me that it has been tough.
Yeah, it's interesting, on a personal level, we're people, and when you look at somebody having a tough time in their job, you can't help but feel a certain humanity towards them. But I look at what we're trying to do for Wales, and on that relationship with between a Welsh First Minister and a UK First Minister. She had the opportunity to show that she was willing to challenge Keir Starmer. She didn't. She clearly prioritised for the first 7-8 months of her tenure, keeping things, not rocking the boat too much within the Labour Party. Then in April last year, when the polls were starting to seriously turn against Labour, then she gave this Red Welsh Way speech when she said, well, yes, I will, stand up to Keir Starmer. But evidence suggests that she's still pulling her punches, and Labour in Wales are pulling her punches. And on the policing issue, she didn't come out fighting when the Home Secretary slapped her down, and when the Labour MP spoke in those disparaging terms about Wales. She wanted to just move on. Well, we can't just move on, because these things are important. And by having, in my constructive relationship, if I'm in that position with a UK Prime Minister, I'll be transparent. I'll be honest. Okay, we have a roadblock. Don't expect to get everything that I ask for immediately, but I'll spell out what those roadblocks are that have been put in place of Wales by UK government. And we'll try to get them to focus on, listen, you've got an election, a UK election in 2029. You're going to seriously have to show Wales that you care somewhat, which you currently haven't done. I think that puts us in a stronger bargaining position than that sort of coziness within one political party, where you've always got one eye on not rocking the boat.
Mm-hmm. So would you push again on policing devolution?
It has to be done. Commission after commission has said that policing needs to be devolved. It's about aligning the work that police do with devolved public services in Wales. They work with the health service within mental health laws, for example, but policing itself isn't devolved. There's a not insignificant sum of money from Welsh Government that goes to supporting policing and law and order in Wales in different ways. Well, surely we should be aligning with a view to creating a better policing structure in Wales. And if you're going through what UK government itself calls the biggest reform of UK policing in 200 years, well, surely now's the perfect time to do it. But it's as if they have an almighty blind spot, even on matters where it's Labour policy. Same was true on the issue of fair funding, HS2 funding to give us the rail infrastructure spending powers that we need, devolution of the Crown Estate. It's a long list.
I wondered on Eleanor Morgan. She has made several comments recently about there being a real possibility that the May elections and the election of Plaid Cymru could lead to the breakup of the UK, because obviously Plaid Cymru has been an independence or pro-independence party. And I wondered what you thought of that, and whether, if you are elected, you will be pursuing independence.
On that question itself, we've made it clear now that there isn't going to be a referendum coming up in the next few years, in this term of a parliament. Do I want to make the case for independence? Yes, because I believe in it, and I want to explain to people what I mean by independence. And it's not isolationism. It's a new relationship. It's a redesigning of Britain in all our interests, right across these islands. I genuinely believe a restructuring of independent countries working together could be really good for all of us. But on the obsession that both Labour and the Conservatives have on attacking Plaid Cymru, on independence, even though it isn't an issue in this election, what I'm hearing, and I think what the people of Wales are hearing all the time, is a Labour government in Wales always wanting to describe Wales as a basket case of some sort that couldn't possibly do what many other countries much smaller than Wales could do. And I think that talking down Wales, talking about Wales in such a negative term will be costly to them.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it goes down well with voters, that kind of that point, that attack line?
Well, what I see is Plaid ahead in the polls, and I want to keep us there, but we'll work hard for that. But that's in the full knowledge that I support independence for Wales, but it's also in the knowledge that I can't force that on people, and I don't wish to force it on people. What I want to do is to have that debate and get people excited about it. If you're, as the Conservatives and Labour are doing all the time, attacking the notion of Wales being able to run its own affairs, you're talking Wales down, and I think that's really risky on their behalf.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask, I spoke to one of your colleagues a couple of weeks ago about the fact that Plaid Cymru has been speaking to the SNP, I believe your sister parties, about, what their experience of getting into government in Holyrood in 2007 was like, and what lessons you could take from it. And I just wondered if you could kind of talk us through maybe a couple of things you've learned from those discussions.
It is a relationship that's important to both our parties. We're distinct nations, we're distinct parties, but often refer to each other as sister parties. We've had a long relationship. The first MP was a Plaid MP, and shortly thereafter, Winnie Ewing was elected as the first SNP MP. And then, the first devolved elections, Plaid performed better than the SNP, actually, and the SNP got into government first. So we've learnt from each other and followed each other's stories very, very closely. What I'm very, very interested in is, a number of things. One, learning from how they've been able to be a capable government, how they've been able to work effectively with the constraints that they have in Scotland. And the meeting that I had last with John Swinney back in Edinburgh in October was a real opportunity to learn how we can hit the ground running from May. But there's also our relationship with UK government. You look at the comprehensive spending review last year. Scotland did better with an SNP government than Wales did with a Labour government from a Labour Treasury. So there are lessons that we can learn, and we can work together to make the case for fairness across these islands. It's an important relationship.
Yeah. I think this is my final question for you, but I'm really interested in the importance of Welsh language to Plaid Cymru. I mean, obviously the party's name is in the Welsh language. I think I've been to a press conference or two of yours where Welsh language is spoken. But I just wondered what your plans are and kind of where that comes from and why that's important to Plaid Cymru.
It certainly is very important to us, and it's been good to see the language becoming less of a polarising factor in Welsh politics, less of a political football, if you like, in recent years, where it's been good to see most political parties, not sure Reform fit into that bracket, but wanting to be seen to support the Welsh language. Yes, we have a strong belief in our nationhood, and our language and our culture is a big part of that nationhood. But it's It's a viewpoint of seeing the language as something that belongs to everybody, whether they speak it or not. It's a treasure for us all, no matter where on that spectrum of linguistic ability in Welsh we might happen to be. We want more people to feel confident in becoming either fluent themselves or learning a bit or in making a decision to ensure that there's Welsh medium education for their children. There's been huge growth in that in recent years. So it's something that's very, very important to us. But again, it's one of those areas where it's about bringing Wales with us. There's a love of the language that is generally felt across Wales, even though you've got big differences in how prominent the language is in some parts of the country compared with the other. Most people speak Welsh where I live. Most don't in other parts of Wales. That's just the reality. But we want it to belong to everybody, and we want to bring with us the people of Wales in really embracing what bilingualism offers us in terms of celebrating our culture. Plus, as an economic tool, it's really, really important too.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think it's become less polarised?
Good question. I think people have come to understand what language is. There was a time where there was much more of a feeling of perhaps people feeling threatened by the Welsh language and unsure what it meant and whether it excluded people. And I hope a lot of work has been done cross-party, and I think Plaid is still seen as being, at the forefront of this debate, and I think that's true to say. But I think it's been a matter of hopefully persuading people that there is nothing to be afraid of, and that it's something to genuinely celebrate, and that it's in all our interests to have a flourishing, lively Welsh language that whilst it will always be threatened in some way, the ubiquitousness of the wonderful international language of English that I'm proud to speak, it can always make life difficult for a small language. But working together, we can really be proud of it and nurture it and encourage it.